Hello and welcome in, everyone. We are here today with Midlife Humor Gurus, and I am Jen, and this is.
I am Sue.
And here you are. We also have a super special guest with us today, my dear friend Rachel Richmond, who's going to be joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about your inner child. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. We are going to have some fun. We might go a little bit serious for a minute. We'll definitely end with some joy and some fun, I think. But I just want to kind of give you a heads up of what to expect for today. But Sue's going to open with a question. So I can't wait to hear your question today. What's your question?
I wanted to totally surprise you with the question thing and just be like, hey, by the way, Jen, I have a question. But you kind of set me up to prepare you for it. But that's okay, because you don't know the question I'm going to ask.
That's right. Okay.
So, Jen, going back to your childhood, say you were able to go back in time and you were able to go back and like your younger you is like hanging out maybe in your unicorn room with the posters on the wall and like the jelly bracelets or whatever.
Okay. Yes.
And you were able to say to your young self, think of like Back to the Future, like with Biff Tannen, and you could like change something in the future. If you were to be able to tell your younger self anything pertaining to your favorite candy, not candy. What am I thinking? That was the question you asked the last time we talked. Your favorite item, just item in general that you should grow up to invest in so that you could be a gazillionaire, what would it be?
Oh, so I'm a kid. I get to invest in something. Okay.
Even if it doesn't even have to have been invented yet when we were kids.
Well, this isn't funny, but I'll tell you what it is. It'd be fucking sticky notes.
You can make anything funny.
Well, I mean, it would be
screwed up. The question makes it funny.
That's part of it, but it would be 3M sticky notes because, bitch, I use those mother effers like they're going out of style. I love sticky notes.
See, this is why you ask the freaking questions and I don't.
Okay. Well, let me. So I love this one. I love it. What's your answer? We're gonna ask one in a second. We'll ask Rachel, and then I'm gonna ask you another silly one because we're gonna go serious in a minute. So I want us to it's like a joy sandwich. Okay. So tell me what's your answer? What would you go back and what would you invest in? CBD. Okay. No.
I'll let the experts handle that one. I would invest in Apple products. And there's a reason.
Oh, I mean, if you want to make some money.
Huge reason for that. Not only would I make money, I'd collect the money and then I'd shut it down. That's what I would do. So there you go.
You have the most contentious relationship with Apple products of any person I've ever met in my entire life. Bless your heart. You would obliterate them. So essentially you go blow up Apple. Okay. We're not actually blow up Apple. No one come in, SWAT team our homes.
I would destroy it to its core, if you will.
Okay. Rachel, what would you go invest in? This is like cheatery because I wish I had chosen Apple, but I'm okay with my 3M stickies. Rachel, what would you go back and invest in?
So I'm going to stick with what went into my head in the very first place.
Perfect.
But I would actually not destroy Beanie Babies.
You want Beanie Babies to still exist, is what I hear you saying.
Dude, they do. Surpriser, my fiance has a whole bunch. Some of them are worth a lot. There's some you didn't know about it.
Dennis has Beanie Babies? Oh, that is circling back in the best way. Okay, I'm writing that down. Dennis, Beanie Babies. Okay, ready? Because that's coming back around. Okay, here's my question.
No one's going to destroy Beanie Babies because they're awesome. Go ahead.
They're cute as hell. Okay, so my mom collected them for a minute. Okay, so you go back to childhood. Tell me the most fun way you would spend a day again. What would you do? Favorite game, toy, thing to do, whatever it is. It's your ideal childhood day in a nutshell. Go somebody. I don't care who. Put it out there. Somebody answer.
So I have a very specific day in mind. I don't know what day it was on the calendar, but a day just like this.
Okay.
We had a snow day. Growing up in the Midwest, it happened. We had a snow day, and not only did we have a snow day, but we had no electricity. Now, back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot that electricity actually powered, except for your lamps.
Yes.
And your TVs. Like we never had, and like we didn't have all of our gadgets and our gadgets and our, whatever.
You made us sound really 80, but okay. Yeah.
I know, seriously, but you know, obviously it was a little bit different back in the day.
Yes.
And I grew up out in the country. So we had 25 acres or whatever, which is great, except it was really, really bad weather. And it was ice. And that's why we lost the power. It was really heavy ice on the trees and the power lines and everything else. And my brother and I were both home from school. We had 0 power, but he had a little radio that was battery powered. And I think it was like C's or D batteries. So it was really big honking batteries, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And needed like 6 of them. But we listened to the radio all day. We had no power and we played board games.
Oh, that's so cool.
And when the power actually came on, much like I am now, I was really bummed. I was actually bummed that the power came on, because then we kind of had to come out of the
magic felt like, I
and
totally
enter
get
the
it.
real world again. And
I love it.
Done. Yeah. But that would be just the simplicity of it. My brother and I were always at each other's throats, but that day, for whatever reason,
the stars aligned. Just
like totally.
Yep. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. That's such a good day. Okay, Rachel, what's your like quintessential childhood day?
Again, same. A memory came back to me. And so I grew up on a 1920s like farm acreage. And we had these old pear trees. So 3 huge ones. And one of them right in the middle was sturdy enough that we could hang a rope, and we found a board. Of course, tied it, straddled our legs around it. And I have 2 older brothers. So they would take turns trying to push me as high up as we can so I could swing and hit the other tree.
Oh, that's awesome.
All the way back to see if I can hit the other tree.
That is amazing. That's so good. I love it.
In the process, I mean, we would have irrigation water. It would come fill up like all of that area to just water our front lawn. And when I wanted to stop, my feet went straight into that water of like,
oh, that is the best. I love that. I love it. I love it. Okay, good.
What about you?
Mine is my instant. I love that all of us had like an instant memory. I don't care. It's like, because I'm dumb. I want to play fucking hot lava on the playground. Where I lived in the apartment buildings that we had, there was this really beautiful pool and then a playground, and my parents managed the whole apartment setup, whatever. And but so it was a huge expansive lawn, and there was like soccer goals and stuff like that too. It was a really actually really beautiful like empty space where all these things were held. And so the kids were like, so I would want Tammy, Debbie, Derek, Marin. I'm like going back through my memory. I'm like, where are all my kids? Where are all my people? And literally we would play freaking hot lava in that playground for forever. We rode bikes. We acted like our apartments were like a city, and you would like ride. I would bring mail to Tammy's mailbox outside her window. And then I would ride back my car to my house, which is actually my bike, which is actually my apartment. And so we had this whole system of like just wild, playfulness and inventiveness. And like we played in the woods and we built forts, and like to me there was something that was so free about that there wasn't like something provided that was like, here, go do this one thing. Like, nope, we invented shit all the time. And it was the best kind of play that I can even remember, the most free kind of moments that I think I can recall from my childhood. So I would totally go back and play hot lava. I'm gonna text Tammy later and tell her I talked about hot lava today. She will get a freaking kick out of that shit. So yeah, so here we are. Okay, so with your inner child, let's go in for a minute. Talk about why this matters and what the hell we're even talking about. I'm such a fan of like demystifying things, because being in the field of psychology for a really long time, we hear a lot of catchphrases. I know we talked a little bit earlier about what was the catchphrase we were laughing about? Shadow work. And it's so things kind of come and go in terms of like their like popularity and like, you know, all the cool things that we're all talking about. And so the inner child psychologically, and then we're going to dive into fun shit, I swear to God, is I want to understand that really what we talked about in another podcast was the inner parts of yourself that sort of might be wounded. Now, you can also have an inner child that is not wounded. So let's be clear that we're going to be talking about both today. But I want to talk about the part that psychologically I think many people think of when they think about like, oh, I have this inner child wound. What does that mean? So back in time, if you were a child and you had experienced some form of trauma, a tragedy, a loss, whatever it might be, the way that I describe this almost is a little bit like maybe just a little piece of you gets kind of stuck. It gets kind of stuck there. And so then what can happen is you don't actually have parts of yourself, like we're talking dissociative identity disorder, but what happens is there might be a part of you that sort of stays in this age range just because of that kind of wound. So in my day, I had clients that I can think of a handful of them that said, well, I have this like 4-year-old part of myself, I've got this 12-year-old part of myself, and I've got this really saucy 18-year-old part of myself. And what they were talking about was they were monumental times in their lives and their journey where something pretty profound happened. And it's not that a piece of you literally gets split off, but it can feel like a piece of you is kind of stuck. So some of the work that I did was really kind of unique, and it was actually really fun. It kept me on my toes, and it had to be really deeply creative. Because if I was talking with a woman who was in her 40s, but she actually felt like she had this part of herself that was stuck at 4, some of the way that I worked with her was as if a 4-year-old needed to have that time. And so we nurtured that part. So I had a woman who came in, and we would do, I'm not kidding you, little notes to each other at the end of every session. I kept those. When we parted ways after probably 17 years, we went through that and read the little notes that she needed to have back and forth with me. It was a space that she shared hard work, celebratory work, things like that. And she liked to get little things that she would bring into me, little stones, like little cutesy things, like when you were a kid, you might have picked it up on a walk or hike. And so part of her work was nurturing that piece of her, and it was part of my work as well. And so as weird as that might sound to your ears, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually a really pivotal kind of work that you can do for someone, because it's a piece of deep healing for someone that maybe they didn't get what they needed, or maybe something really tragic happened. And so we just want to go in and surround them, insulate them in love and light, and help them kind of figure a way to function, and then kind of pull those pieces all back together again, if that makes sense. So that was one of my, I was actually really delicious work I love doing with people. And so that's a piece of what we're going to, we're kind of talking about, is there might be a part of you. So I will tell just a little of my story, and then I'm going to let, if either one of you, by the way, Rachel, we didn't say this before we started, you're welcome. Nothing like starting a podcast with a guest being like, by the way, I should have told you this before we started. If we talk about anything that you do not feel like you would like to discuss with us, please know that you don't have to say a word. So if there's something that you're like, I don't want to tell a story about that, cool, please do not. So I will start with mine, because I know that I have a 17-year-old that is consistently standing with her hands on her hips and giving the finger to the entire world. And so she was developed when I went through a trauma with my family, and we thought that my mom had taken her life for about a week. And our entire family imploded. We lost everything we had. It was and it just led to more trauma, which I will not talk about today because it's not necessary for the point of this journey. But what I want to say is that at 17, you process things at the capacity you have. So if my client had a 4-year-old, she processed things at a 4-year-old level and capacity, understandably. If she's 12, she processes that piece at 12, right? So as we age, so at 17, with all my worldly wisdom and all these things, I took in a bunch of stories and ideas and belief systems about what happened. I must not be that important if my mom would leave me. Right? What did I do? Right? How come this is happening? How can you love your family and leave us? I had all of these really kind of horrible experiences, and she left and we didn't even know she was suffering. So she left, and we were sort of left holding the bag as an entire family in complete shock and utter amazement, much to everyone's, I'm sure, complete understanding. And so there was a part of myself that developed this really inner warrior. She's still actually a really badass bitch, and every once in a while she still will rear her head on my behalf, and she's a protector. And what she did was she was like, the fuck you will, the fuck you will, the fuck you will. So she was like, dukes up, you're not going to mess with me. If you break my heart, if you're a dick to me, if you do something, I will look as cold as steel. I had the best outer facade ever on the planet. You would not know you were making me sweat, and you would not know that you were hurting me. And so she developed this really rough exterior. And now everybody didn't see it this way, right? This is an internal part of my journey and process with this. But she defended me. And so what I always say to people is, when you develop these parts of yourself in your journey, is to have great grace about it. One of the things that people will do is really get critical of them, like, why do I feel like I go back to this thing? And Sue and I just talked about this, like, I had this old form of functioning. Why the hell am I still freaking doing it? And listen, at one point, What you did protected you and it supported you. It defended you. And we have defense mechanisms for a reason, right? So we just want to honor. It's like, no, that was actually a good thing because you needed it when it was there. Now, what happens is as I age, my inner feisty 17-year-old who shut off and doesn't want anybody to hurt her, and she's going to leave first before you can. Bet you can guess about how awesome that worked for me. How's that working for you? Not real freaking great. So then I've got to go back in time and I've got to go, okay, that shit's no longer working. Well, it worked at 17, 18, 19, maybe 20. All of a sudden it starts losing its shine, right? In like late 20s, early 30s, if I'm still adopting the same capacity of how I'm coping, it's not going to function the same way and it's not going to be as effective. And so rather than beating myself up, rather than looking at myself and like, what is wrong with you? What is broken with you? How come you can't just get this shit straight? It's like, nope. I honor and respect that part of me showed up to protect, love, and honor myself and nurture myself in a way that it really, really needed. And it wasn't getting somewhere else. And so I want to just lean into that space. We talk a lot in our podcast about grace and kindness and self-compassion. And so I think today, as we talk about these things, as we tell stories, I'm going to invite you to really adopt that idea that like, just show up and love yourself first. You don't have to beat yourself up. That's not what we're about here. We're just examining and bringing self-awareness to the forefront, because I'm willing to bet that someone listening today has probably not necessarily had the time or energy to look at some of these parts. And it can be daunting. I mean, you can go inner child work. That sounds like some freaking Freudian shit. It sure does. And there's a reason why it's important, right? And so, and honor that in yourself and honor the journey. And if you're not ready to do that, you don't have to, but I want to just create an invitation that can you do that? And if you do it, can you do it from a place of kindness? Sue, do you feel like you are willing or able to share any part that my 17-year-old's my biggest warrior. So she's probably my biggest one that I say, I kind of think split off a little bit from like I need to create this protective barrier. Do you have a story or an experience, time in your life that you felt like you needed to develop something to protect yourself the same way?
I think that is probably where my sense of humor came from. Because you're always saying, "Oh, you're so funny, and thank you, by the way." Because I always felt the need, and I didn't know this at the time. I don't think we know this as kids, do we? When we're little, I don't think we necessarily know that.
No, we don't.
So I think what my defense mechanism was, to make things light, because sometimes things got very intense and very heavy in my house, was to lighten the mood. Well, if someone's in a bad mood, then I'm going to do what I can to put them in a good mood. And I think that is kind of where that culminated from. That's where it got developed. And that was when I was really little. And then I had an incident our senior year in high school, towards the end, where something happened that shouldn't have happened. And I asked for help and I didn't get it. And I was told that it was my fault and that I should let it go because I'm going to graduate anyway. And I'm going to be graduating soon and I don't want that kind of trouble. So it was this unfinished business of, well, it happened because of you. Sorry you're suffering, but you brought it upon yourself. The end.
I can't. That like, I'm like, okay. Okay.
So there's a little tiny girl in me who always tries to just lighten the load in the room, which as an adult, by the way, I have learned to read the room, always read the room.
Probably a good quality. Yep.
Sometimes funny, just ain't called for.
True story.
But then there's the more developed, like a teenage. God, I would not go back to being a teenager again. If you paid me all the money in Apple's account. There is just
hell no.
Nope. But then as a teenager, that's kind of where I don't want to say that my growth was stunted in either one of those. I do think that it's, I think time it was things just like have scar tissue that grows over that. And it just, you kind of move forward.
Sure.
But there are some things that come up where I'm like, why do I feel like this? Oh, okay. That's why. Unfortunately, I feel very fortunate to know that and have that self-awareness. And we've been talking about self-awareness a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to be able to have that so that I can stop and say, okay, I have actually had to do that before, where things if somebody is fighting or things are getting escalated around me, I have to just, like, the little girl in me just comes out and I have to say to myself, this is not happening to you. And sometimes if it does, because sometimes things can get heated between you and a friend or whatever, I can say, this is not then, this is now. This is the conversation you're having now.
Right.
Handle it as an adult. You can defend yourself. You can speak up for yourself.
Yes.
And you don't have to think that the world is coming to an end. This is just a conflict. It's not a big deal.
Right.
And so I have been very fortunate to be able to go through that, because I had, when I started going to therapy several years ago, my sister-in-law, I talked to her at great length, and she said something along the lines of, and I had never heard this before, and then I heard it from you, Jen. Go back and take care of the child that needed to be taken care of, who didn't have anybody. Now you can be the one to take care of that child.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I'm like, what the fuck is she talking about?
It sounds like some bad shit, something, doesn't it? I know, totally.
What did you go through? But I realize that, because there are wounds and there are scars, and you can go back. And we've talked about that, Jen. We've talked about that in the past too, about having to go back.
Yep.
And in some instances it sucks to go back, but in other instances it's like, oh, I can go back. And almost, I have done that in the last year, probably remembered conversations that I've had with people. And in order to put it to rest, because I can't do anything about the conversation I had, I'll recreate a conversation in my head to come out the person who can move forward.
That's exactly
and
right.
not have to keep going back. And not that I'm not rewriting history, because I know how the conversation went.
Right.
I can tell my brain, okay, this is what we should have said. This is what we should have done. We didn't. And now we know if that happens again, we can have that conversation in a different way.
Exactly. That's so beautiful. Yeah. I really appreciate that. And I think one of the things you said, well, there's so many things you said that stuck out for me, but one of the things was that, and I'll just drop it because I think it's so interesting. The role at home. So I was taking, so if you ever see me, if you're watching, I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm like over here, this is what I'm doing. I'm like, I don't want to, I remember to come back to this thing. I don't want to forget it.
Jen's ordering something off of Amazon.
Exactly. Like I could use a new pair of pants from Amazon. Okay. No. So the roles at home. So one of the things that we love talking about, and really it was designed more from a approach of systems theory around families with addiction issues. But I also think it happens in abusive. I think it happens in homes a lot, that we develop roles. So I jokingly today, in a conversation with a friend of mine at a ranch in Utah, was talking with her about that we were talking about what role we would be. And she was saying something. Oh, she was going to be the juggler. And I go, I'm the jester. So I'm like you. I am the youngest. I'm the baby. And my role was I created humor. I also was like the entertainer, the funny one, so I feel like in family systems, even if it's not wholly dysfunctional, we'll also sort of pick roles. There'll be like the person who's like going to go get straight A's. There's the peacemaker. There's the troublemaker, right? There's all these kind of typical things that we'll see people dive into. And it's in order to sort of hold things together. It's this, and we don't do it knowingly. We're not like, I'm going to be the funny one. There was no conscious decision-making about that. It was like just kind of how I showed up in the world and part of my wiring anyway. But I think it's really just a beautiful spot to kind of drop that in, that also sometimes in family systems, when things feel really messy, we'll create these coping mechanisms by showing up and doing a certain role to hold space and create a sense of equilibrium for everybody. And so you inadvertently dropped right into that, which I thought was really beautiful. So I wanted to drop that here. But I love it. And the beautiful idea of like, this is not happening to you. What an incredible, but the distance that you're creating with that and objectivity of like, this is actually not happening right now. This is not happening to you. And then I love the idea that you're recreating conversations in the here and now. Like you can go in and reinvent and have those really powerful conversations. I used to encourage people to like write letters, bring it in, we'll read it, we'll burn it. You don't ever have to send it. You don't have to, but have a conversation, have a minute, or do it with me here. What would you say if you could? So a lot of reenactment, which sounds goofy. And like you said, that inner child work, when I first started doing psychotherapy, when people say this, I would be like, oh my God, I like biggest eye roll ever. I'm not even kidding you. What a bunch of bullshit. I thought it was such bullshit. I was like, okay. And then I got trained by a psychoanalyst. I was like, I'm going to do cognitive behavioral therapy. And Clay comes in and he's like, actually, you're going to look at the root of all things. So he completely shifted my gears and the way that I saw things. But one of the things that was really important, that was one of my favorites, was having people reenact. So I had a client that I had her bring in a blanket, a baby doll. We did shit. If anybody saw her coming into the office with that, they'd have been like, what in the F is happening in that office? Because we had to go back and I would say, what would you want to feel? What would you want to smell? What would your mama smell like if you could choose her? Well, lavender. Cool. Bring some lavender in. So one of the things we did was really pull in all the senses and had her practice nurturing herself. And it was a monumental healing journey for her. And so as goofy as it might sound to your ears, if you're listening and you're totally unfamiliar with psychotherapy or how this shit works, or you thought inner child was a bunch of bullshit, I completely hear you, number one. Number two, it effing works. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I helped people do that process and that journey. And I think that it is actually so pivotal to your healing. So I wanted to circle back to that as well, because I loved that you talked about that re-nurturing and taking care of yourself. That is absolutely feasible. So if you're listening and you haven't done the work and you're like, oh, I might have needed that. Absolutely. I would encourage you to go and do some work around it. Rachel, do you have anything you want to add? You do not have to tell a sad, sappy story if you do not. But if you have anything that you want, I'm like, poor her. I didn't warn her in advance. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit with like both of you. So like what you were saying, Jen, like doing that, a tool that I have often used is actually, I will ask a question with my dominant hand to my inner child, to whatever is maybe addressing, or just a space of curiosity of like, okay, what does my 1-year-old feel like? You know, I usually address utero to about 8 years old. It's the time frame that I usually address the most. But oftentimes what I'll do, I will use my right hand to ask this with the intention of this child, of myself, ask the question. And with my less dominant hand, whatever shows up, so whatever color, texture, if the little one actually gets to answer the question, if she knows how to do the writing. And so some of my favorite like experiences has actually been like, hey, little one, can you just draw me a picture? And no joke, still to this day, seeing the little ones like drawing, I'm like, dang, I'm good.
I love that. I love that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And then to add like with Sue, I get it with the element of kind of adding in with like the whole what's going on at home. I remember once that I know for myself that I have learned to read the room, but I've done it in the way of like, what's their body language? How are they communicating? What's the feel of the room? Kind of a thing. And the feel of the room was very important to me.
Yep.
And so I remember once eavesdropping on the stairs or downstairs, listening to my parents argue out of curiosity of like, what do adults argue about? And it got pretty heated, so much so there's my little self chilling on these stairs, you know, about like the forced stare down so they don't see me.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so eventually I get so sick of it, feeling it through the house, that I go up there, I'm like, can you guys just stop fighting? They're like, we're not fighting. We're just discussing things. I'm like, discussing things.
Right? I know. Bullshit. Exactly.
And what I recognize, and so now years later, this was maybe only about 3 years ago, living at a house with these two roommates. They used to be couples, and now they created such a relationship that they could still live in the same house with all of us.
Yeah.
One was on the top floor, one was in the basement. Let's just say there was distance.
Okay.
But one day they're arguing in the kitchen, the middle ground of the house, filled, like I could hear them from downstairs again. So I could feel myself getting antsy. I'm now pacing in my own safe space of my room, of my studio. I got so sick of it that I went right up there and I yelled. I'm like, can you guys just stop? Their big deer in headlight eyes of like, oh my gosh.
Right.
For me to speak out that much and to also encourage just how ridiculous their consistent fighting was and how petty in some situations it was. This was a cute thing is once it was silent, I hurry and go downstairs, and no joke, I could feel like my inner child of like, what do we do? What do we do? Oh my God, I want to leave. Can we leave? Can we get out of here? I'm like, honey, we're an adult now. Yes, let's go drive. We can leave. Let's take care of ourselves. We don't have to stay in this crazy house like you had to as a kid.
Yeah.
And I chose to just leave and do some self-care that way.
So beautiful.
Now in like present moment, I've actually learned to be so in tuned of, oh, there's confrontation. I can tell there's something uneasy in this, relationship with somebody.
Mhm.
And so it's a beautiful opportunity then to be like, okay, is this an opportunity to clear a conversation? Do we just get to address it? Because I care enough about this individual that, it just gets to be open.
Mhm.
And so I can kind of see now has like full circle healing that inner child from the beginning of base experience of, yes, how awful sometimes it is to hear parents argue,
Mhm.
to the point of like, I care about this person so much. I know how to use my voice, or just plain and simple call out, hey, this is bullshit.
Right.
What's
Exactly.
going on?
What's happening right now? Exactly. Oh
and
my
let's
God.
address this.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And you are so good at that. I've witnessed it. I may have experienced it, just saying, as I flick my hair. And so she is so good at this. But I love that you're coming back to that whole full circle thing. And I thought was really beautiful too, was like one, how you talked about addressing the different ages. Super cool. I actually might have you circle back to that. So somebody help me remember. Because I might have you like walk through it one more time, a little bit more slowly in a minute, because I thought that was really beautiful and someone might want to hear that again. I know I do. So that's usually an indicator that we need to have it said again. But I also thought it was really beautiful that you talked about that kind of going through the ages until 8. And one of the things that I want to drop in psychologically is that actually many of our really monumental moments that are going to be really pivotal for us are happening between like ages 0 and about 8 or 9. So very often when I was doing EMDR and having people go back and do some trauma work, that's we would send. So it's interesting if you say to somebody, "I want you to float back in time," and that was one of the phrases that we would use, and people would be like, "So when I was like 43," I'm like, "No, no, 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 float back again." So when I was like 35, I'm like, "No, no, no." All the way back, because what we do is we go to like the most recent, right? Understandably, it's a human, like I'm going to land like in the most recent human adult thing that I can remember, and I'm like, yep, that's not going to go deep enough. And it's amazing to me, and I actually still use this tool in my coaching with people, is I'm like, nope, go back as far as you can remember. And very often there are going to be pivotal memories, and they don't mean it's trauma. I'm not over right dramatizing all that, but there are pivotal, really powerful moments that happen. And very commonly they're going to be between 0 and 8. Now, most of them, if you're young enough, you won't recall them quite the same. But 7 or 8 is a really powerful age because we start to really comprehend things around that stage of life. And so I actually loved that that was the age range that you went to too. I'm like, let's just drop that wisdom in for anybody that's not aware of that. So if there is a piece of work you want to do at some point, I would encourage you, and I would encourage you with support. How many times have you heard me say this? We're always gonna come back to this. Whether coaching, therapy, whoever you're working with, healer, to go back in time and take a look at that to see if there's some pivotal memories and moments that you might actually just have a space that you need to do some work in. There might be a wound, there might be a stuck spot, but you just want to, again, kind of circle back to that space, because what can happen, and this was really cool in EMDR, and then I'll shut up about it because I freaking love this kind of work. The magic is that sometimes if you went back in time and you found a really pivotal memory, the things that you did in the rest of your life can actually be healed if we go back all the way and grab this memory. So it's why old memories are so effing important, why we're like, let's talk about the inner child, because it sounds like a bunch of bullshit. But if I go in and I heal something from a really long time ago, it can have this really powerful, beautiful domino effect of shit that gets knocked out and you don't have to do the work for it. I don't know about you, but I'm here for less psychological fucking work and torture. So that's why I love doing it. And it was really fun when someone would grab it, because I'm like, yes, that means that we're probably likely tossing out some of these, like it's the old garbage we don't want to carry around anymore. Yay for you. So there is a really important pivotal piece of going back and like harnessing that. So Rachel, I'm going to have you go back, because I'll brain for it for sure. Go back and tell me, walk through the steps again, if you don't mind, telling us that kind of like process that you go through, because I really love that. Would you mind reiterating that one more time for everybody?
Like the coloring, or
It was the stages. You were like, and my 1-year-old self, and I like loved that like walking them through kind of what you do with that, because I thought that was a really cool thing to do.
Well, it's just because the dominant hand is so much of your identity and what is the current moment, what you're writing. And so to use your less dominant, and with you, if you're ambidextrous, please just be in tune to what works for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But even still, if you're ambidextrous, like what was your inner child's choice?
Mm-hmm.
What did that little one want to write with?
Mm-hmm.
And teachers maybe told you differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I use my dominant hand, whether to specifically just address an age frame,
Okay.
or if it's just simply, hey, who am I talking to? Or where do I need to address? Like I leave it so open and in a heart space
Mhm.
with I call it a gentle curiosity. There's no
Mhm.
judgment. I'm just curious.
Mhm.
And so have whatever age frame shows up, I then use my less dominant and just basically ask, like, is there a question I get to ask you? Do we get to just draw and hang out? Like, what picture do you need to be like color? Or is it literally like a time to release and scribble? And you're scribbling so hard that the paper rips up.
Mhm.
Go
Mhm.
for it.
Mhm.
And with no judgment. And obviously the beautiful part now is being in as an adult, I get to still clean up the mess.
Mhm.
And the little like to that concept of collecting that little one in of like, let's clean this up together.
Mhm. Mhm.
And whether that I've heard different techniques, whether it is simply just throwing it away, or if you get to burn it, if it's paper or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, or if she draws you a sweet little picture, go ahead and frame it, put it on your refrigerator for a little bit.
I love that. It's so honoring. And one of the things that we did when we introduced Rachel, I was like, this is my friend. Rachel actually comes with some deep expertise that I did not really like launch with. So why don't you take a minute? Because then we're going to dive into fun shit. I promise everybody. I told you we would, and we will. So I want you to take a moment and talk a little bit about your history, where you've been, what you do. And then I know you just added a certification. So I feel like it might be a fun way to just kind of drop in like a little bit about your background. So someone's like, hey, where's this woman coming from? What's her background in? Would you be willing to just share a little bit about that for us so that people can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a very high functioning Christian family. And with that, I went into like construction as a kid, but realized that wasn't my occupation.
Mhm.
I was into massage therapy at 19 years old.
Mhm.
And being in the city, learning of like what it's like to have so many cultures and diversity and,
Mhm.
religious beliefs, it was awesome.
Mhm.
So I've been a massage therapist since I was 19. And with that, I've added on so many Eastern and Western medicine certifications. The
Mhm.
ones that I adore and love the most is honestly, I love holding space. I love holding space for anybody that gets to come into that. Honestly, their choice of healing
Mhm.
is fabulous. And I'm flexible to be able like, great, where does this get to shift and move? That can look as if whether it's deep tissue to acupressure to my new certification of body mapping. And I'm also a breathwork facilitator. So using body mapping, which is a way of it's profiling, it's learning how similar humanity really is
Mhm.
with certain features. So
Mhm.
as I look at certain people, I can tell if there's like if they have a stronger jawline, I know that their words will be more stronger in communicating. They might be a little bit more blunt.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's a little bit rounder around the jawbone, they might say words. I might get to soften my words for them.
Mhm.
So what I've loved is growing up in the family that I grew up with. I wanted to learn so much about humanity, so that I had an effective way to communicate with them. So
Mhm.
it's gone to body language, to where in our body are we holding stress and fatigue, um, and how in body language, how in our body is that communicated?
Mhm.
So obviously our legs being able to move forward in the walk of life. So
Mhm.
specifically like the glutes, how powerful are your glutes to actually move you forward?
Mhm.
So I incorporate that with massage of for them to breathe through. And what's awesome is that so many times, like during therapy sessions, people just open up and be like, I have no idea why I told you that story of like how powerful this situation was in my life as my fist is like moving
Mhm.
their hip bone. I'm like, uh-huh, yeah, uh-huh.
I just made space for you to have expansive experience.
Yes,
How awesome. I
how do you
love
get to
it.
incorporate a powerful movement
Mhm.
through life? Uh-huh. Great. I get exactly why you're talking about this story. And I incorporate a space of just breathing, moving. And honestly, the biggest word that I use is permission.
Yeah.
To be able to give yourself permission to let go of anything that's no longer serving you, anything that's not even yours.
Mhm.
Take a few deep breaths and just let it go. Claim back whatever is yours. And
Mhm.
that's a very strong space to claim your power back.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a little bit of what I
I love it. So I met Rachel at a retreat, and she gave me a massage through the retreat. And this was how I met her. She was also my roomie. So I got to know her like pretty quick because you're like sharing the same space. And it was such an incredible massage. And I never forget, you were doing something and I was like, I think she's massaging my effing liver. I don't even know what it was. I was like, ha ha ha. Like, I don't, she was doing something. And I was like, I have never had this experience in a massage. But I will tell you, it was literally so powerful. And for me, like, what I think can be missed, because you're not going to say this probably about yourself, is that there is a difference in having someone who's doing that in a capacity of moving your body and helping your body have a different experience, but also a healer going in and doing this work. And so I know that you say you're a massage therapist, which you are, but also Rachel is a powerful healer. So there's more going on in that space. And that's why she's speaking to those other components, and the capacity she has to help kind of combine those pieces is really powerful. So if you're in the Utah area, feel free to track her down, because she's amazing. And so one of these days I might talk her into doing some stuff online virtual. We'll see how that goes. She needs a computer first. I keep giving her grief. So we're gonna work on her. But hopefully she'll be out in the world serving people in a broader way and across the land when it works. So beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing, because I should have opened with that. So let's circle. Now let's talk about the joy of the inner child. So question for both of you. And I don't have an answer, by the way. I'm not like baiting you when I ask this question. Do you feel like, I know I have my opinion and I want to hear yours. Do you feel like that the inner child that we have that is within us, that can feel joy and wonder, like awe? I love that. We're going to get to that in a minute. Do you think it always requires something painful or tragic to be in touch with an inner child? And I literally was just writing it while we were talking. So this is not something that was on my list. It's not on my agenda. I just was thinking about, I wonder if we feel as though that's always necessary. Or can we just have a relationship with our inner child no matter what? Not all at once. Somebody, anybody. What do you believe? What do you think? And there's no right or wrong answer. This is just a hypothetical.
I have always been envious of the people. And then again, I have to pull the scope out and tell myself, well, that's not necessarily true, Sue, but it seems like I know people who do have this great connection. Like they just seem to know how to go through life. Like they just came out, they were nurtured. Their weirdness was embraced by everybody around them, including themselves.
Yeah.
They seemed to just get like what my coming into in my 40s of, everything just pop, 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 pop. Like my reality just shattered when I broke the glass. Like when I got out of this is how it's supposed to be. This is how it is. Right. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how everybody should be. And if they're not, then they're wrong, sort of mentality. Yeah. Right. And so I look at some people and I think, wow, you've been like this your whole life. Mm-hmm. You not to say that there isn't trauma, not to say that there wasn't hardships. I mean, I think to a certain degree, we're not here to necessarily always live a life of rainbows and unicorns, because without that stretching, we can't learn, we can't grow.
Right.
Not that I would ever wish anything bad to happen to anybody, of course, but I do think that everybody has their form of drama.
For sure.
I don't want to say trauma, because sometimes that can just be a really overused and heavy word.
Agreed.
But I have always been envious of the people that I think, oh, you get that. So you grew up this way and I grew up, not to say the way I grew up was wrong. It's not that. It's just that it's different from other people. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that, oh, wait, so you already knew that? Mm-hmm. You already knew that it's okay to be this way and that way and that way. And now I'm just discovering, and you've known it since you were like 8 years old. And, I've always been envious of those people. So is there that necessity of trauma? I don't necessarily know if there's a necessity of trauma in order to be able to go back in and reintroduce yourself to your inner child, because none of us come out with an instruction manual. So maybe those people look like they had their shit together. It doesn't mean they did. It just means that they came to it earlier in their life than I've come to it in mine. And I think that, I think too, I think of these, these incidences that we were talking about earlier in this conversation. Nothing that happened to me was earth shattering. There were incidences, there were moments, there were people in my life that I wish had never happened, but it was nothing that's going to leave a huge open wound. Which I feel very fortunate about, because not everybody gets to be that lucky.
Yeah.
So I feel like, which came first? Is it, I want to do this work, and so I'm going to go back and meet my inner child and go back in time. Like you said, don't start at 45, go back to, 6.
Right. As far back as you can go.
So I honestly can't even remember now which came first, because I started going to therapy several years ago, and then in doing work with you, Jen, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I started revisiting my inner child because of therapy, or if I started getting more into deeper issues in my current situation now, because I went back and visited my inner child. I don't remember which one came first. Which I think everything happened for me the way it was supposed to happen, and it happened when it was supposed to happen. I was just gathering all of the puzzle pieces, and it did take me until a later stage in life to be able to have all 500 pieces, to be able to piece it together into a bigger picture. Yeah. Some people get the pieces sooner. Some people never get the full box.
Can you imagine doing the whole fucking thing and missing a piece?
Right? I know.
That sucks so bad.
This is what you get for buying your puzzle at a freaking garage sale. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Count the pieces, people. But no, I don't really think, like you said, there's no right or wrong answer to that.
Yeah.
My personal experience is, once I discovered that I am now the caretaker of my inner child, and I really, going back to when we first started talking about this, I really do hate talking about it to people who aren't in the know. Because
sounds like some wackadoodle shit.
I sound like a wackadoodle. I sound like a wackadoodle. I don't care that I sound like a wackadoodle. That's the beauty part about doing this work.
That's exactly right.
But if you are talking to somebody who is completely, like, if I were to have this conversation with a certain member of my family, thinking of one specific member of my family, I'm not even going to say whether it's male or female. This specific member of my family would just be like, you seriously need help. Yep. Whoever you're going to for therapy is fucking you up.
Exactly.
And you need help. You need somebody.
Now you broken. Now the Jack in the Box has popped open, and what in the hell Pandora's box shit is this?
Yep. You are completely off the rails, and now you're nuts. And you need help. And it would be said from not a place of love, but of fear, because you're talking to somebody who has never contemplated this or done this, or even thought that it's something that could be done or should be done.
Right.
They're so far out of your realm of squad members that you can't, it's peace, love, and namaste. I release you. I can't deal with you. Yeah. Because I just feel like once I dove in and started to really think about all these little snapshots in time, I was able to connect the dots and draw the lines between, I probably do this because of this, and I probably do this because of that. And it's static. It's not finite. I mean, there's constant movements when it comes to how you deal with things, depending on the situation you're put in at any given time. Exactly. And to go back, like, I do like your idea too, Rachel. You were saying, going back to what both of you were saying, the 1-year-old and then the 2-year-old and the 3-year-old or whatever. And we don't have those memories of being that young, but if you can go as far back as you possibly can, whatever it is that you're not remembering, you can probably fill in the blanks.
You can intuit it, right? That's what Rachel's getting at. It isn't that necessarily her exact 1-year-old is telling her what she goes in and she just says, I'm opening the door for you to walk through here.
Yep.
What part of my soul right now could utilize this kind of support? What does that look like? And it's all intuition.
Yep.
And so that's what's beautiful. And part of that is requires some openness, right? Because if you're like, what in the hell, what is that? You're probably not going to practice this and have an experience. I could do exactly what Rachel's talking about and absolutely in a hot second be in touch with something. Today I need to paint. Today I need to go and I need to walk or run or go outside and touch rocks in the backyard or touch the trees, or like I would find childhood wonder, right? So to me, I think that's so beautiful, but that if that's a new practice to you, it might sound and feel really uncomfortable in the beginning. But I do think that that's what we're getting at is you may have a memory of your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old self, but honestly, it's just about opening yourself up to being able to be in that childlike wonder space and not overthink it, right? Just lean into it, which we'll talk about more in a minute, because I think that's a really powerful tool. We'll talk about how to use that. But yeah, well said. I think that that's what that is just leaning into your intuition. And you've got great intuition. You meditate, you do other practices. I think this actually will become really easy for you as well. So I would love to hear about you doing this, because I would love to see kind of what comes forward for you, because I just think you would drop right into that space as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Rachel, what about you? Anything? This was like, this was a lot. Thoughts about, is it that we have to have a trauma to have an inner child experience, et cetera? Where are you at with that? What do you think about that?
What comes to me is, there's so many, yes, opportunities of a learning experience, but what I call them is, it's not so much trauma, but it's a heightened of emotion.
Absolutely.
And for me, I call it a heightened emotion. And that could be an absolute extreme joyful time, or it could be an extreme element of like, oh my gosh, I really am uncomfortable and don't like being in this space. I really don't want to hug this person. Why is my mom making me do it?
Exactly.
This is not cool.
Exactly.
Invasion of my space.
Exactly. Right. Right. Exactly.
And so and it's just depending on what I get to be with that day. So it's just like, sometimes like, I am so sick of today. Yep. We're going to shift right out of this because I want to heighten emotion of like this joy and enjoyment. So going for a walk, being with animals,
yes.
go swing.
Yeah, exactly. Go swing. Right. Exactly.
Minutes.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
So it's just that choice. I love that space of choice of which heightened emotion that I kind of want to step into.
Yeah.
And I hold space for the current moment of myself.
I love that. I think that is a really beautiful way to say it, that heightened state of emotion and what you're looking for. To me, when I think about, can you have an inner child without trauma? I think the answer is yes. I think what comes forward for me intuitively is like, yeah, I think you could have a pretty freaking rockin' life, still have heightened emotions, like what Rachel's talking. You did not make it through unscathed. I mean, everybody's got something. You might not have a significant trauma, right? But you have had things. You've had losses. Maybe you lost a grandparent, a pet. You had a best friend who moved 9 million miles away. Right? People have things, and so that does call into that heightened emotion. I think that there's other reasons why we can tap into that inner child in a beautiful way. And we're going to talk about that too. Because I feel like I wanted to sort of like start building that bridge of like, okay, what about the joy of inner child? And so we're going to talk about that next. And so I feel like we want to build that bridge of whether you believe you have to have something significantly bad happen. I really just do believe that you innately have this beautiful sense of childlike wonder inside you. I think we forget it. I just read a post from one of my friends that I really appreciate. And she posted, this gentleman was out looking for rocks. Quick story. And this older woman walks over and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, what does it look like I'm doing? And she says, well, it looks like you're walking around and picking up some stones and then putting some back. And, like, are you picking ones? He's like, yeah. He's like, I just pick up the ones that I like and they caught my eye and there's something that I like about them. And she was like, oh, okay. And he's like, why don't you do it with me? So here she is. And now pretty soon she's walking around, picking up rocks and putting them down and walking around. And he said, wasn't that cool to just take a minute to be in your childlike wonder about this, to connect with something in a different way? And she's like, that actually was really fun. And that was the solitary interaction that they had. And off she went. And to me, I just think that is a beautiful example of a way to really lean into your inner child that just wants to have space, that has curiosity and wonder. And to me, the beauty of childhood, and I would love to hear from both of you about this, the beauty of childhood is you just don't know to give a fuck. You just don't know to care what people think necessarily yet. You don't have limitations about what you should or could be in the world. You just don't have that yet. And so there is this absolute freedom. And they don't have filters, right? They just say whatever the hell comes to mind, insulting or not. They don't have any filter. And so they're so real and transparent and vulnerable and honest. And they don't necessarily know without conditioning to cover up their feelings or to tuck it in or to not just be fully who they are.
Mhm.
So when I talk inner child, that's the shit I'm talking about. I'm talking about remembering that part of yourself in a way before the world got a hold of you. So to me, so that's my take on inner child, kind of like what is beautiful about that. Do either one of you have anything you want to add about that? That's my version of when I say inner child in just the most beautiful form. That's what I'm getting at. Do you have other things to add that might be helpful? Either one of you.
Some of just talk, people. Watching Jen's face. So much of my absolute joyful childhood self pops in really quickly with just been in nature. And so whether that is just simply going in my backyard into the mountains, or if it is just, hey, I'm driving on the freeway, but oh my gosh, that sky looks absolutely gorgeous. Can I find something in the clouds? And so being able to implement that curiosity again. So that's where I love stepping into, is like, if this looked a different way, what would this shape of this person be?
Yeah, I love it.
Or whatever. Or I have a new puppy. And so it is so much fun watching this pup, absolutely destroy some toys. One of them's lamb chop. Kind of sentimental on that one.
Oh, no, not lamb chop.
I love
watching her just mangle this thing, and then the curiosity that she finds what the squeaker actually looks like.
Yeah.
So I get it, and I squeak it in her mouth, and then she hears it in her brain, and she's freaking out because of the acoustics that's going on. So watching even that curiosity,
absolutely,
in the littlest things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Sue, what about you?
Yeah, I have actually, it's what I love about being at this age now is that all of the weirdness that I wanted to display when I was a kid, I'm able to just, now I can do it because, as you get older, got some younger generation, like younger folks in the generation looking at you, and they expect you to just kind of be off your nut a little bit. So
weird anyway, right? So just live your best life.
So for me, it has been, I started volunteering at a wildlife rehab a couple of years ago. It was during COVID, actually. And I just, feeding baby squirrels and feeding baby raccoons, and having, there was a baby bobcat there, a kitten that came in a couple of years ago, and we kept her for the winter because she wasn't ready to go out yet. So she was there all winter. And it's a freaking bobcat. Here I'm talking to all these animals. I'm like, I had a friend in South Carolina who, she said, when I first met you, I swear to God, you had bluebirds flying around you and landing on you. And like,
you are Saint Francesca of Assisi. Let's just be 1000% honest. You are.
And what was so funny is, you've known me for over 30 years. She knew me for 5 minutes, and she was just like, bam, I got you pegged, Snow White. And it's just, it's really sweet.
I love that.
And so I've started, actually, you were talking, Rachel, about going out into nature. I have actually I talk to them if I'm out. I mean, it's feel ridiculous, but I don't. It just makes sense to me. I mean, so much so to the point, well, actually, it was funny, going back to the bobcat. I was actually told by the director of the wildlife rehab after a while to stop talking to her because I was actually kind of pissing her off. The bobcat, not the director.
I was like,
he was such a, God, she was an amazing beast. She was beautiful. I loved being able to like watch her grow and thrive. And she got released and she was back out in the wild where she belongs, but she was such a bitch. She was so like growly and like normal, like a normal animal is going to be when they're not in the wild. That's how she was. But she had balls. She was definitely prepared to be released back into the wild. Right from the time she came in as a little kitten, she was like this big. I mean, she was like smaller than my dog.
Yeah.
And the whole time she was there, she just growled. You'd get near and she'd growl. So then finally the director was like, talking to her is probably a bad idea because she thinks that you're you're, you know, aggressive and you're trying to attack or whatever, even though I'm coming in with a big pan of raw meat.
Yeah. You're like, this is for you.
A couple of weeks ago, we were walking Ziggy and we were in town. I live out in the country, and Jeff and I, we were in town and we were walking him around, and he's so sweet. He nurtures that in me because he's kind of the same way. We were walking along and he stopped and he was, hey, Sue, grabs me, and I look up and there's two robins, and there are two robins up in the tree, and they're both looking down at me. He stopped me to look at them so I could say hi to him. I mean, that's how, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, hi guys.
Yep. Uh-huh.
It's ridiculous, but that was me. That was me when I was a kid. And I got my ass handed to me for it by my peers in grade school because kids can be mean. And I had forgotten about it. I had totally forgotten about it until I started going back to the rehab and I started talking to these animals. Like, it made sense to me that I'm talking to these animals. And after a while I realized, oh, I can do that now because I'm an adult.
And I don't care what anybody thinks.
I don't care.
That's right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's so, but I do think that's inner child. Yeah. I also think it's a soul thing, but I think it's inner child to, like, you know, I am having a conversation. I talk to my animals too. I always do that. I always have. I talk to every creature. I'm not afraid. I'm friends with all. But I think that's a beautiful way to be deeply connected. And you guys were talking about nature. You're talking about like animals. And I think like being around my great niece, that kid, we played dinosaurs. I mean, like, I'm out there making we're growling at each other, and pretty soon I'm on the floor and she's riding me like a horse, and my family's like totally having this engaged conversation. Junie and I are around the living room and around the kitchen and probably wearing a hole in my Lululemon pants, but I don't effing care. And like seeing the world again through a child's eyes, I think too brings this out in us so huge. Like, I know you just had your stepkids, Rachel. Like, we know, right? Like, being around children too, I think is such a beautiful bridge to this, because children remind us. And so watching Junie have wonder and joy and trying new foods and doing these silly things and being so playful, and like, I love being in her energy. It reminds me to connect with my own and get out of my own adult head. So I was thinking about, where are places that you've learned? Where have you learned to get in touch with? So I forgot mine. I will be completely real. I think when I was a young adult, it was probably like 20, when I was like too fucking cool to be like a kid. And I went to be a camp counselor for kids. Perfect idea. And so I was standing there and I was in a state of misery, and I was standing in a fucking cabin with 8-year-old girls. And I was like slightly, rocking myself back and forth, and they're wrapping me in toilet paper to look like a mummy. And I have to then run to the camp counselor owner and show him across the camp. And then I've got to come back. And it's in that moment that they are hysterically laughing. And I am in this internal, are you fucking kidding me space? And all of a sudden, I start laughing. All of a sudden, this complete moment of, you got too fucking big for your britches. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the pure joy of what they're doing right now? And can you listen to their laughter? And pretty soon I'm laughing. And it was this most beautiful, weird awakening as a young adult. You forgot. You are never too fucking cool to connect with that part of your soul. And it was the best reminder. And it was pretty early on in the journey. And I think it allowed me to dive deeper with those kids, because I stopped getting in my own way. And so that was one of my big takeaways, like, where I think I was like too cool. You know, you're a young adult and you think you don't have to know everything, and like you couldn't pay me. I'm sure I was a gem. But anyway, so that was one of my memories that I was like, that is a definite pivotal moment where I had to remind myself, like, you always have this within you. So that was a big one. And it changed the whole rest of the summer for me. We recently had a silly string fight in our friend's bedroom. We're in at my friend's home and in Utah, and we're in her closet, and I noticed this shell of silly string, and I'm like, what is this for, Cindy? And I'm like, and she's like, oh, those are for my I'm worried it's like, I pull that shit out, completely spray Rachel and Cindy. They're standing there on it, like, now they know it's going down. Pretty soon, cans are flying off the shelves. There is, when I tell you, I am not kidding you. I was probably 8 silly string. It was in my hair. It was on my clothes. I had to take my shirt off. I had to borrow Cindy's shirt. I was covered in shit. Rachel's covered in shit. She and her in her bathroom cleaning for like 20 minutes. I was like, are we ruining her woodwork? Cindy doesn't care. She's like, don't worry about it. Best sport ever. Literally the most 15 minutes of pure, unadulterated, nothing else matters except for this minute. Complete silliness. And so to me, I really marvel when adults, and of course, these two people completely just get right in with me, right? They're like, hells yeah, we're going to have a straight, silly string fight. Like that to me, those moments are like my bridge. They're like my reminder of let go of your, whatever you think is going to happen, what you look like. You're just in this moment having this completely silly, playful, precious memory. And you are in that childlike state of just joy. It's just, we're laughing hysterically. That's how I got it in my mouth. Like it was just something else. And it was so, to me, like those little minutes. I would also say the other one that was a big one, and then I want to hear from you guys. Where have you had moments that are really pivotal? You're like, there she is. I love this. My other one, and this is a good one because I did not expect this either. We went to Disney World. My sister's 50th birthday. She's like, I want to go on a cruise and I want to go to Disney World. This is me. I'm not kidding. There was an inner bitchiness of like, really? Okay. Like I was just like, Disney World, gonna be fucking busy. There's gonna be angry children, frustrated parents. That sounds delightful. It's hot as F. We go in like August. Hot as fuck. So I'm like, okay, but we're gonna be a good sport because this is not my birthday. And my niece was working there at the time. She was doing an internship, which was really cool. We got to see her and spend time with her, which was super bonus. Best thing I ever did. I'm gonna be honest. We're there, screaming, crying children, no shit. The frustrated parents, and I'm like, bitches, I do not have to do any of that. Every single ride, and Kirsten was like our guide because she worked there. She knew exactly where to get whatever ride we wanted, how to make it the fastest. We had birthday badges, my niece and I, because it was right around our birthdays. All the characters, the whole day we were there. Like literally the coolest, most fun, magical. I'm like, everyone needs to do Disney World as an adult. And my sister and I are in Dumbo. We're cracking our asses up. We've got pictures of us in Dumbo going up and down in this little cheesy, we're like beaming. Our faces are beaming. Like just literally, I think it was another minute. I always love when I get my ass handed to me by an experience where I have this prejudgment in my head of like, oh, this is going to be so, you know. No, literally we went to bed that night. We were so fucking tapped out. We got back to our super nice, like, I forget what kind of hotel it was. If I could say it, my sister got me on my behalf, the snootiest, beautiful hotel on the planet to stay while we were there. It was a complete surprise. She was like, it was a total gift to me. 8 p.m. We were all like so hot. We had sweated so effing hard all day and gone so hard like kids. Like 8 o'clock, we were like, I'm done. We were like, do we need no dinner? I'm like, I can't, we're not going back out. I need to go to bed. Like, but the best kind of day, there's pictures of us with freaking ears on and the whole freaking thing, Dole Whips, like just every single moment of our childhoods that we got to relive and enjoy, but also just being there as an adult and having a different perspective and not having to attend to anybody but yourself. It was literally the most delicious thing ever, literally. So I wanted to throw out there a couple moments where I know I felt super in my like most beautiful inner child like wonder. Like I was absolutely effing here for it once I got over myself in my brain. It was so beautiful. Do either one of you have beautiful experiences that you can remember where you were like, aha, this is an invitation to be fully in my child?
Mine was Disney Land in Anaheim. So I've been to Disney World quite a few times when I was a kid, which as a kid, again, you're with your parents, you're on their schedule.
Yep.
It's just a different experience. Glad I got to do it. My mom and I actually went on a Disney cruise. I turned 14 in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And then we did the Disney, whatever. But again, with my mom, I'm under her guardianship, obviously, right. She gave me some licensure I did some stuff. Cause she probably just figured, well, it's a ship. What could happen? But I went to, my friend invited me, she's a runner. And she wanted to do, and she's a huge Disney fan. Her and I actually both worked at the Disney store years ago, back in Madison, where in the area where we grew up. And she asked me, do you want to come with me? Just wondering. And I'm like, to Disneyland?
Your response.
Right? I'm like, are we back to being 13? Because we've
Yeah.
been friends since we were 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you not grown up? Really? You want me to go to Disneyland? You don't want to go to like Sedona. You don't want to go to LA. You don't want to go to like the Redwoods. Okay.
Disney it is.
Okay. Let's go to Disneyland. And I'm a huge Disney fan. I love Disney. I do. I genuinely do. But I was like, that's where we haven't hung out in 30 years, but you want to go to Disneyland together. Cool. Okay, I'll go. I'll support you. Because she was going to run the Tinkerbell half marathon. Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God.
See?
Seriously. We got there the first night we met her friends. And then when we walked into the park, I swear I physically transformed back into a small child. I would have to look at pictures of myself. It wasn't visible to the naked eye. I don't know. But I turned back into that kid. And what was so beautiful is that I could, like you said,
exactly.
It was just me. I was in charge of myself.
Full permission.
I was with her and she was on a mission, obviously, because of running. So she had her own path. But the morning of the run, I had access to the park. I had full access to the park.
That's cool.
Because the run was happening, but the park wasn't open. It was 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I went to her to drop her off we walked down to the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
We got her bit, she was doing her run thing and she's giving me like Disney coupons and she's like, here's we got stuff we go to Starbucks and you can do this and you can do that. I went and got a coffee and a pound cake or whatever. And I got my steps in basically before the race even started because I was walking around Disneyland without the crowds, without people, without all of the other kids. And there was couldn't go on any of the attractions or anything, but I was walking through and I'm like making a note of all of the things that I want, I want to go back and do this and let's go back and do this. And, kind of fill in the gaps of the stuff. Cause I think we had a 2 or 3 day pass.
Okay.
So I knew we were going to be going back there quite a bit. And we went to Adventureland. I rode a roller coaster. I freaking hate roller coasters, but I'm not going to go to Disneyland with one of my best friends from childhood and be like, I don't like roller coasters. They scare me. I'm getting on the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept my eyes open the whole time.
Same.
So people ask me now too, like, what business model would you want? I'm like, Disney. I mean, whatever, there's all sorts of them out there. Disney, give me Disney any day.
I love that.
In fact, if Disney bought Apple, I would be back on board.
Oh, Jesus, here we go. Oh my God.
But that was what was beautiful too about it was that, like I said, I had access to it without the crowds because it wasn't open yet. And I was in the park and people were, the shops and stuff were open for the runners.
Right.
And stuff like that. And for the spectators and everything. And I followed her along. She told me about where she was going to be where. And I got to that point and I took pictures of her crossing this point and I took pictures of her starting and I took pictures of her going across the finish line and everything. And then she got done and we went back, took a quick nap and did shower thing, went back to the park. And I was like running around. I didn't quite have the ears, but I was running around and we did the parade at night and Mary Poppins and Fred were walking around the park and I'm like, oh my God, it's Mary Poppins. And I'm like, Sue, it's a freaking actress. No, it's Mary Poppins. just totally buying into all of it because
exactly.
That was my childhood. That was the first movie we rented when we got a VCR. In fact, was Mary Poppins. And it was I hate to sound so
it was magical. Nope. Magical. I 1000% feel you. I know I didn't want to go on Magic Mountain. I was really scared. I'm not a roller coaster person.
Yeah.
And so we go and the first thing they want to go on, I'm like, because it's gonna get busy. So like first thing out of breakfast, they're like, let's go to Magic Mountain like this. Right. But here's me. I'm walking up to it. It's deader than a doornail, easy to get on. And there's kids getting off of it. I'm like, they're all smiling. I can do a thing. So I get in there. I laugh. I mean, when I tell you, I laughed from the beginning that freaking thing took off. I laughed till we got done. I don't know how long that ride is. It's not real long, but all I'm going to tell you is all I did. Cracked up. I got off. My stomach hurt from laughing. It was so fun and so enjoyable. And I did not see it coming. And same, I was like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't know what the hell I thought it was going to be. Like, it's not like, you know, Six Flags for the love of all that's holy. But anyway, so good, right? I was like, this is amazing. Like, I just laughed and had such a good time and was free. That experience is beautiful. Rachel, okay, thank you for sharing, Sue. Rachel, what about you? Anything that's like a, God, I went and had this like magical childhood something. Did you have any moments that came to mind?
Well, I've noticed this ever since I was young, and I've just now, like Sue, I've just adapted it into my life. But I will learn what can get people to laugh, whether it is from a Disney scene or what if it is like a Jim Carrey scene. I will learn how, like the Animal Pet Detective. I'm great
Oh,
at the
yeah.
dolphin scene.
Uh-huh.
Oh, when he's calling Snowflake, you know.
Uh-huh.
But it's things like that that I notice, like I still kind of do to this day, just to see it as I get to know people. I'm like, where can I get you?
Uh-huh.
And but an experience that I absolutely love, because so I'm, as a kid, I didn't know this, but you know, I'm a kinesthetic learner. And so me hanging upside down on the monkey bars to put all the information into my head, oh, I was actually doing something good for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned with myself to just stay active and moving. Well, as I've gotten older, I've forgotten a lot of that. And so I went through this experience at one of Laurel Houston's retreats. And what we got to do was basically put some sound. You can't hear anything but the song, earbuds,
Oh God, the story.
into your ears. And then she gives us a blindfold. So I told Laura, I'm like, there's two songs. There's two songs. One is completely me, which is Follow Your Arrow by Casey McGravis. So that one was there. But eventually I told her, I'm like, that song's not vibing with the room. Let's put on Big Butts.
Yep, read the room, baby. Yep.
So this is documented somewhere, but what I absolutely love was knowing I had blindfolds on, knowing I had the earbuds on. They had no idea what I was about to sing. And then all of a sudden I just burst out, I like big butts.
The whole room singing, the whole room singing with her. Priceless. Like, it is seriously, because you have to sing. So I don't know if you're picking up what she's putting down. You have earbuds in and blindfold on, and you're singing, and no one can hear the music to go with what you're singing. It is, I mean, something else. It was the best. I'm not even kidding. Like, so good. Like, exactly. Like, it was such a playful minute. Everybody was singing with her. Everybody. Okay, go ahead. Because it was so good.
I had no idea. No idea.
It was so good. It was so fun.
What was cool, because I moved my body like so much with so much just that fun and enthusiasm.
Yes.
No joke. Once I got done, I was so winded that I fell to the ground. I'm like, I'm done. But there was something, I'm like, there I am. Like, there was something of like a judgment or perspective. I'm like, and we fell down and it died.
Yep.
Because we're dancing our little heart out and creating movement in our life. So that was a good one.
That's such a good one. I know. I was thinking about the ways that too, like, I think that we tap into some of these things, and I was thinking about movement, moving your body. Art therapy. I did a lot of art therapy in my day treatment days with teenagers. And it's a lot of that releasing, getting in touch with things that are in your subconscious if you're not overthinking it, and allowing yourself to just move. Have those, right, that just allow yourself the space to put whatever it is that's in your mind on paper, on a canvas, whatever it was, clay. Really powerful to watch what happened. And so I think that's another really cool pivotal way is, and also movement. We did rec therapy. So you don't realize that all of those things are actually also a way to get in touch, I think, with your inner child and allow that to come forward, right? It's like all of a sudden you're back in art class as a kid, or what, gym class as a kid, or whatever. And maybe that was traumatic for some of us. Not my favorite. Art class was good. But I think it's like like allowing yourself to kind of go there and be not attached to the outcome. I just am doing this because it's joy. I'm singing out loud because it's joy. I don't care if anyone thinks I'm amazing or not. I'm going to do this art and I don't give a shit if it looks like Picasso. Like, to me, I think some of those things too are just huge, cool ways to kind of get in touch with your inner child. So I want to throw that out there for people. If you're like, I'm not sure where to start, those are some great starting places. And like Rachel said, it's movement. Dancing. I dance my ass off any chance I get. I dance when I get ready in the morning. I move in my body. I love that kind of thing. So I think that's a really cool way to try going. Sledding, also very good for the soul and very childlike wonder. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, this is so funny. So I said, for me, inner child work is it's nurturing energy with yourself, but also I think it's like keeps you vital. For me, it's like in midlife, why do I do this? Because it keeps me vital. It reminds me of something that's an internal resource that I'm carrying around with me all the time. And I might just forget, I might get ahead of myself. And so I love the idea that it's going to keep us vital. And then I had to tell a story because this is so funny. Rachel last week had a full-on conversation with me via voice memo, which is like our mode of communication. And we're just weird that way. Also, Sue and I do a lot of this.
Yep.
Rachel had a full-on conversation about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. When I tell you that she might be like, I'm not worthy of her inner child, I mean, could you please speak to the beauty of the PB&J? Because I just, even if it's like that we're closing with this notion for this podcast, because I was like, I don't know that I've ever had a full-on adult conversation about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich quite like Rachel Richmond did. So if you could lay that on us a little bit, I really appreciated that reference. So could you do that for us?
Legit, it looked like in the bright and early in the morning when my adult self realized I have a 12-hour shift. And I am like getting to the wire of late. You need to leave the house. I'm like, PB and jelly. Here we go. PB, here we go. And make it. I have one for breakfast. I'm like, gosh, that was perfect. It was good. It stuck in my belly. That's awesome. Well, I'm going through my appointments through the day. And no joke, I probably have 3 more to go. And my brain was literally like, I'm getting hungry. I'm like, all we have is a peanut butter and jelly left. When is the best spot to eat that peanut butter and jelly? Literally, the very last appointment that I had, I'm like, now I'm driving to my client's house. I can eat my PB and jelly. No joke, because the bread at that point, so, okay, strawberry. It was creamy peanut butter. I'll deal with it. Okay, I'll deal with it. I prefer the crunch.
Okay. No, ma'am. Smooth peanut butter camp right here. Okay, go ahead. We digress.
But it was smooth today, guys. Smooth that day. No joke. So I'm recording like with Jed, and I'm eating this peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and all the strawberry jelly has now been soaked perfectly into the bread. Not all the way through, halfway.
Full on
The creamy
description.
It was great. Just needed some milk, man. Just needed some milk.
It was literally, I mean, I have never heard someone have a full on conversation about a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I was like,
No.
this is going down the books. Also a quoter of cartoon movies and silly movies. So just both of you do this. You're also, Sue, kind of a one-liner, aren't you? Like you remember things. You'll be like, do you remember blah, blah? I'm like, no. Like you have some memory going on, the two of you, of like I don't know, is it movies? Am I right, Sue, that you do movies too?
And TV.
And TV? Yeah. Oh my God. I'm like, both of you must have incredible memories. That's all I can say. But it cracks me up. So I did love that I had a full-on adult conversation about peanut butter jelly. And today, seeing my healer, she talked about making, this is so funny. I go, there is something in the air. She made cinnamon toast. She was like, I was so excited you needed 10 extra minutes. You know why? You know what I had? She goes, this is what she says to me, literally, you know what I had in my house? I go, what? Bread? Butter? Cinnamon and sugar. And you know what I did, Jen? I went and I made myself. So, I mean, she is freaking, I'm like, are you joking? This is hilarious. I go, what is it with my people and carbs and childlike food this week? I go, what is even happening? She was so excited to have cinnamon toast. I was like, good for you, girl. Good for you. Okay, here's the last question because it's fun and we got to go out with something. Unless somebody has a final thought before I ask you a silly question. Anything. Favorite childhood food. Go. Favorite childhood food. I think I've got mine. I think I'm going to go with mine. I'll go with my instinct.
Raw cookie dough.
Oh, that's a good one too. Okay, that's a good one. That's a solid. All right, Sue, what about you?
Macaroni and cheese.
Same. Same. I was like mac and cheese. I'm like, I could like a lot of things, but I'm like, ooh, mac and cheese as a kid.
Yep. I was sick, like spring cold, nasty, gross, settled in chest, thought I was gonna die sick a couple weeks ago. And I still had to do some work. And I went into town and I was driving home and I was like, God, I'm not even hungry. I feel like I should eat because I haven't eaten. And I'm like, hot damn, there is a box of macaroni and cheese at home. I swear to God, I got like 50% healthier. I was so excited about getting home and making the mac and cheese. hand to God, I don't know why I put it in a bowl, because I put the whole freaking pan in a bowl and ate all of it.
There you go. Just don't even bother with the bowls. Don't dirty a dish.
Seriously, why did I not just eat it right out of the pan? And Jeffrey's just like, "You gonna share some of that?" I'm like, "No."
You were like, "Hell no."
No,
sorry.
not.
Make your own effing box of mac and cheese, you mofo.
There's another box in there, but if you eat it, I might hurt you a little bit, because I need that for later.
Here's the thing. Go ahead. I was gonna.
No,
sorry.
I was just gonna say it just again, as a kid, like.
Yep. No. Here's a childhood food you go back and eat, and you go, "That is not good." I'm just gonna give you mine. SpaghettiOs. I have
Nope.
This actually tastes like vomit.
No, seriously, any of those, like even the ravioli, the SpaghettiOs with meatballs, like the meatballs, those aren't meat. That's not meat. What the hell is that?
Oh, that's not. It's mystery meat. Are you kidding?
It's not okay.
Oh, it is not. It's not good. I mean, it's not. I mean, if I was in like the apocalypse, I would eat it. But I'm just saying, I was like all excited. I sat down and I was like, took a bite. I'm like, oh, that tastes like vomit. Okay. I used to love this shit. This used to be so good. Oh my God. Ew, ew, ew. Anyway, just thought I'd share my childhood SpaghettiO experience. Any final thoughts from either one of you that you have that you would like to share about your inner child and being in touch with that? Anything that we missed?
No.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for hanging tight with us. This was a gem. This was like a Toad's Wild Ride at Disney. I felt like we were all over the map and diving into really cool places around this. And so hopefully you took something away from both the maybe a little bit more serious side of things, but also how to tap and lean into, that inner child and respect and honor that part of your soul. And definitely just staying in touch with that wonder and the curiosity and the freedom that they bring. And to me, midlife is another opportunity to unlock that again. I think that midlife is a lot about losing the old shit that we know doesn't work, the old ideas and frame of reference that we have for who we are and what we are and how we show up. And I think it's such an invitation to ditch all the old shit and step into a new place. And you don't give a shit as much. I know I don't care what you think of me. And so I think for me, it's a really beautiful time to sort of like reawaken that inner child and harness that, because you do come to almost a developmental place that feels like childhood. I'm now curious again about things in a whole different way. I'm super like, I have so much awe and appreciation for things in a way that I didn't have for quite a few years of my life. Like in a strange way, it kind of feels like it came full circle for me in midlife. And so just creating that opportunity and that invitation to you to be liberated and find that same sense of freedom of childhood in yourself in this time, in this season of your life. And honestly, watch what happens. I'm going to challenge you that if you do this, if you give yourself permission to lean into this space, as uncomfortable as it might feel to start with, watch how people are magnetically excited to be around you. I will guarantee you people will want to be around you because you have lit up this part of your soul that their part recognizes. And they go, oh shit, I forgot. I want to play hot lava on the playground with Jen in the hot burning sand in the summer until we sweat our asses off and we miss meals because we're having so much fun. We see that in someone else and it gives us permission. And so that's one of the things that I love talking about is when you stand in your own power and who you are, you're giving another person permission to do the very same thing. And I guarantee you will draw magnetic people in. I just guarantee it. I'm grateful for my childlike people in my life because they are a great reminder to keep in touch with that part. So anyway, we're so grateful for you being here. Thank you so much as always. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, give us some feedback, ask questions if you have it about our podcast. We're always grateful for that. We love engaging with our audience. We just want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Rachel, for coming and being with us today. It's always so much fun to have a guest with us and just knock us out of our orbit and do a little something different. So thank you so much. And we will plan on seeing you guys next time, but we're so grateful for you being here. And so take care, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.